My next guest spent 13 years of her life as a sister of mercy. She then moved out of the convent, found love, and married. Years later, she lost her husband suddenly. It has been, for Rose Gordy, an unsettled life. And yet, in spite of all the changes and challenges, she's continued to do what she loves most: to write. As part of our book author series, Rose Gordy joins me this morning to talk about her latest book, Unsettled Lives. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Now, Rose, let's talk about you and when you first started to write. You were 7.
That's right. I was in 2nd grade and wrote a little story that has a beginning, middle, and end and some dialogue. The Blessed Mother appears to a little girl in her playpen and asks her where her mother is, and she tells her she doesn't know, and then the Blessed Mother leaves. I was a very spiritual young girl.
And the rest is history, because truly you've never stopped writing. Something that struck me is at the age of 18, you wanted to serve the Lord and you became a nun.
That's right. I believed what my high school religion teacher said, a nun, of course, that if you have a good health, a good mind, and desire to serve God and the community accepts you, then you have a vocation, which means a calling to the convent.
And that was your calling.
That's what happened, yes.
But after 13 years, you decide to leave the convent and you found love. Tell me about that.
Well, as some people might think, well, that there was a man waiting in the wings. There really wasn't. I left for deeper personal reasons of finding myself, my true self. It was 5 years later that I married my husband, and in the next 2 years, we had 3 sons, including twins. I've always said to people, for someone who was going to live her life without men, I lucked out with 4.
You lucked out with 4 wonderful men.
Yes.
Now, I know your husband passed, and I'm very sorry about your loss, which leads me to your book. You've definitely lived an unsettled life, and this book is a compilation of 21 short stories. Is there correlation with the stories and you?
There are 3 that stand out. After 8 years in the convent, I started to question, seriously question, whether I belonged there. And then after I left, with some latent negativity of those years, I questioned whether I would get pregnant the first time, because I thought I had nothing good to pass on to any child. And currently, I'm facing being a widow after decades of being a wife. So all of those have led to being unsettled to a point.
And I love the short stories, because even though I couldn't identify, let's say, with the person or the story, I could identify with the message, and which brings me to the first one. Let's talk about elusive peace. Tell me about that.
Well, Ron is a man who's been married for 20 years to a very materialistic wife, has 2 daughters who are similar to her, and he returns to his monastery for a visit and relishes the peace that he remembered there. But at the end of the visit, he realizes he has no other choice, as it says in my story, but to return to the other world of stock options, 401ks, mortgage payments, private school tuitions, and most of all, his unsettled life.
And that really captured me, because I remember thinking to myself how many times I've been in a situation where reality hit, and I had to do the right thing, whether it was to, go back to the demands, the responsibilities of everything in my life. And sometimes you just got to do what you have to do, correct?
That's right. And you try to find at least an elusive peace along the way.
Excellent. I love that one. Let's talk about the confession. This one is the best.
Well, this young woman is on her way across country to meet with her master's advisor for school, and obnoxious man sits beside her, and she really doesn't want him to be there.
And that's happened to every woman I know.
She doesn't want to talk to him. She doesn't want him to even be there, but she's a captive audience.
And he's trying to pick her up.
Yes, and he's obnoxious, as I said. Finally, she turns to him and says, "How securely are you seated in your seat?" And he says, "I'm fine." And she says, "I'm a nun." And he wants to jump through the floor of the bus and doesn't believe her. And in the end, he asks her, as my last line goes, "Why couldn't you have just been some ordinary woman I met on a bus?" Jan didn't have an answer. Shaking her head, she walked away.
Now, of course, my question to you before I say goodbye is, was that you?
Yes.
That happened to you?
Did happen on the way across country to Notre Dame, yes.
And what did he do finally when you got off that bus?
He got on another bus, and I got back on my bus and went out to the university.
Rose, it has been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for telling us about you, your family, and your life. I wish you much luck with the book.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to read the book, Unsettled Lives, go to rosewords.com.